important step forward and will require a strong, ongoing support to ensure effective implementation. And today, a Customary Land Reform Bill proposed by the committee is being prepared to be tabled in Parliament. This bill aims at reforming the legal framework for the recognition, registration, governance, and use of customary land in Papua New Guinea. It intends to harmonize customary practices with constitutional principles, as well as to establish mechanisms for formalization of clans, dispute resolution, and oversight. By grounding governance in customary decision-making structures and ensuring free, prior, and informed consent obtained through good faith processes before decisions are taken, this legislative reform can align Papua New Guinea with international human rights standards and put us at the forefront of sustainable development efforts. As a state party to the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, PNG has a clear obligation to invest the maximum available resources for the realization of the rights enshrined therein. This includes the right to adequate housing, of which tenure security is a central component. And the United Nations Committees on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights has recognized that secure and equitable access to use of and control over land can be essential to eradicate hunger and poverty and to guarantee the right to an adequate standard of living. The committee also emphasized that the sustainable use of land is critical to the enjoyment of other rights, including the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, and the right to development. Far more than an economic commodity, land constitutes the basis for social, cultural, and religious practices, and the enjoyment of right to take part in cultural life. Poor land governance has a disproportionate effect on women and children who have the right to own, use, and control housing, land, and property on an equal basis with our menfolk, and to have access to the resources necessary to exercise those rights in practice. The United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, or UNDRIP, explicitly recognizes the right to land for Indigenous peoples, including their collective right to use, access, and control of lands, territories, and resources that they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. These protections are reinforced by the Indigenous and Tribal Peoples Convention of 1989, or ILO 169. The declaration further provides that Indigenous peoples, that is, almost 100% of Papua New Guineans, shall not be forcibly removed from their lands or territories, and that relocation may only take place with their free, prior, and informed consent, and after agreement on just and fair compensation, where possible, with option of return. Finally, the declaration also affirms the right of Indigenous peoples to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. The spirit of these tenets of this declaration are embedded in our Constitution. National Goals and Directing Principle number 4 speaks to these principles. These international human rights standards provide clear guidance for how land governance reforms should be shaped in practice and inform our laws, our institutions, and our decisions. While important progress has been made, security on tenure is still not a reality for all people in Papua New Guinea. We are acutely aware of the challenges that persist, but we are equally aware that many of the solutions are already known. The findings and recommendations of the 2005 and 2019 National Land Summits provide a clear roadmap, and the task before us now is to address the unresolved issues and ensure their full and effective implementation. By grounding this work in the internationally recognized rights of customary landholders and international human rights law more broadly, Papua New Guinea can pursue development that is sustainable, inclusive, and respectful of the rights of both present and for future generations. I thank you for your engagement over the next 2 days and look forward to concrete outcomes that will guide Parliament, government, and our partners toward a just, peaceful, and sustainable land governance system for Papua New Guinea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Keith Iduhu. May I invite you to please take your seat on stage. So may we now call on the United Nations Resident Coordinator of Papua New Guinea, Dr. Richard Howard, to give his opening remarks.
Deputy Prime Minister, honorable members, our colleagues from the Diplomatic Corps, Dame Carol, all of you that came here today. I mean, it's remarkable to see such a crowd, you know. To me, that says that we all recognize the importance of land issues for Papua New Guinea's future for sustainable development. I mean, and the energy that you've created through this parliamentary special committee, we can see the effects here today. I thank our UN colleagues, OHCHR, UNDP, IOM, and others that are working together to support the government and civil society as they move forward on this issue. Today, we're gathering to take stock of the challenges in protection of customary land rights in Papua New Guinea and the importance of land management and protecting human rights as a tool for sustainable development in the country. I think, you know, from my background as an anthropologist, having worked in Asia Pacific for 30 years, and I started in Indonesia, which used to be called Irian Jaya back in the day, when the ILO Convention 169 came into effect. And there, you know, we saw the importance of consultation process in supporting a collective position on development projects in the resource sector and the complications of that. You know, to carry out a consultation process in a way that works well and addresses all the different factions in a community is nearly an impossible task. So I think implementing these two international standards, ILO Convention 169 and the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, it's a goal we aspire to, but we realize that, you know, it is really hard. And I think even in a context like Papua New Guinea, where you have so many indigenous processes for consultation, that it is no easy task. But I think we are on the right course in Papua New Guinea. The need to address land issues is fundamental for addressing those overarching challenges that Papua New Guinea faces. The UN supports the government, the National Executive Council, to develop a national prevention strategy. That was endorsed by the Council last year. That strategy focuses on addressing conflict on a broad scale through a multi-sectoral approach in Papua New Guinea. That strategy will unlock additional assistance from the World Bank of about $500 million, but will require an integrated approach to meet certain deliverables. Land, again, is the central point of that conflict prevention strategy, conflict management strategy. So I think today is an opportunity where we really position the UN behind this effort of the Special Parliamentary Committee and the leadership in the country, both on the legal framework, but also in how we can bring our expertise to support consultation processes that drive free and informed prior consent, that we support communities to organize effectively around those processes. I've spent my 3 years in Papua New Guinea working very much on the Bougainville issue, and we can see the long-term impacts of moving forward with resource projects like Panguna in a way that sometimes divides or exacerbates the divisions in communities and doesn't necessarily address adequate relations with communities as development takes place. And the long-term impacts on that are felt today. how can we learn from those experiences and do better in future resource processes. I mean, development is really the key to many of Papua New Guinea's challenges. If you look at development indicators in Papua New Guinea, for a country that is this wealthy, why is it that these indicators of health and education and clean water, access to electricities are so low? So the future really is to stimulate development, to support large-scale resource industries, but to the degree that they also are developed in collaboration with communities. That is a sustainable future. That is sustainable development. We speak of the sustainable development goals throughout the world. What is the sustainable and sustainable development goals? Ultimately, it's about bringing communities along in the process. So that is really what the core of these two conventions is how do we manage consultation processes and create partnerships that allow for resource industries, large and small, as well as agriculture, to move forward in a way that brings communities with it and supports the improvements of services across the board in rural areas. I think the challenges are clear, the approach is clear, but how we get there is not easy, and you know that better than I do. So today, I just have one message really, that all of UN agencies will support in any way in the development of the legal framework, but also the application of that framework at community level. So we do have programs in the highlands, for example, peace-building programs that support communities, working with civil society and churches and the local government to negotiate solutions to conflict, but also support in redevelopment of services in communities that have come out of conflict to maintain a long-term peace. I think the missing link of a lot of the UN work with local government is how we support communities to better negotiate with large resource industries and find a way forward that works for all parties. So I commit our collective resources from the UN system to work with you at all levels to implement the laws that you develop in the future. And we do have all of our human rights standards that guide us in how we think. And sometimes we may be accused of being anti-development, but I assure you that the best way to carry out development is by taking into account human rights throughout that process. It's not an either or. The only way for a long-term future for Papua New Guinea is to take human rights on board at day one and support communities to advocate for their rights, to ensure that development is sustainable and that people's lives ultimately do improve. They deserve that. Papua New Guinea deserves much more than what rural communities have today. And I think with the leadership we have here at all levels, that you can achieve that, and we're here to support you. So thank you for organizing this meeting, and we look forward to learning from you on how we can better support going forward. Thank you. Mark.
Thank you very much, UN Resident Coordinator. Please take your seat on stage. So colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Prime Minister for Lands and Physical Planning in 2002 as part of the Marape Rosso cabinet. He also acquired the additional responsibility as Minister for Immigration Affairs in 2024. So we would like to welcome this morning our guest of honor, the Acting Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, the Honorable John Rosso.
Morning, everyone. It's good to see a very crowded room here. It shows the importance of this meeting. I'd like to say thank you to Keith for organizing this and the United Nations, acknowledging that it's a critical aspect of our lives in Papua New Guinea's land. And it's good to see a lot of people here today. I'd like to acknowledge Sepuka, my good friend. Good morning. New Zealand High Commissioner, Your Excellency, good morning. Our Knights, good morning. Good to see you here, my old friend too. And various dignitaries, Mr. Henao, good to see you again. and every single person sitting here today. I see a Member of Parliament for Samurai sitting here, Alatau. We also have Mawantok from Kabum sitting here too, and also LBS sitting here too. So well, a lot of dignitaries. I see Lands also sitting here too, the Acting Secretary sitting here too. So, Ogada, if I missed you, Bikpla morning leave, Blolgeda. I think I need glasses for this. It shows your age when you start wearing glasses. Some people say when I wear glasses, I look like Sepuka with my beard, so I think it's a compliment. Members of Parliament, government agencies, United Nations, key critical partner, customary landowners, community representatives, civil society, financial institutions, developers, industry stakeholders, academics, technical experts contributing to policy and implementation, Lands Department, everyone in attendance and listening in if the seminar is being broadcasted. This seminar is timely. It is timely as Papua New Guinea embarks on development plans, strategies, and ideas for the next 50 years. Our nation is re-examining policy and institutional settings guided by the Reset 50-50 agenda, not just in land reforms, but in other agendas as well that we all know about, with a strong focus on delivery, inclusion, and economic participation, and what we have not done right. And whilst we look at changing and reforming some agendas, there are some agendas that we should look at that we shouldn't reform at all in other sectors. Some of them, let's look at the example of the 1985 provincial government reforms. A lot of people say that is why we are in some of the mess we are in today. Because when something was working right, we decided to change it to something that was not working right. Look at the educational reforms. When I went to primary school, it turned me out to be a pretty good bloke, I think, same like this guy sitting here and a lot of people my age sitting here. It didn't turn us into in fact, it was, I think, the best education system. But we decided to adapt and implement another foreign system that was thrown at us. And that foreign system put a mess into the kids coming out today. Now we're going back into another education reform system to try to fix that mess again. So when we do reforms, always look not only at trying to change a working system, pick the good bits, leave out the bad bits, and try to make certain that it applies to Papua New Guinea. That suits Papua New Guinea. That will work in Papua New Guinea. Not because it works well in Singapore, not because it works well in another country, that it would work well in Papua New Guinea. Basic example, the education reforms and the 1985 reforms. So it is just an example. When we try to do something, we should always look at the pros and cons and work at it with an open mind. Look at it with an open mind, because sometimes changing something doesn't necessarily mean you change it for the better. I would like to acknowledge the seminar organizers, especially Keith, for this sharing this important thing, the parliamentary committee. I fully support the parliamentary committee, and me and Keith have had very, very strong discussions on this, and Keith brings a lot of that background information that some attributes are really, really good that we need to look at. And I'm certain with a wide, diverse variety of people discussing these things, we will be able to find solutions to some of our customary land processes in Papua New Guinea. As the chairman pointed out, Lands Department, I was appointed Lands Minister in 2019. So I've had a bit of a stint in lands, and having been at lands has had a lot of issues. It's not an easy department to run. From the outside, everyone thinks it's easy. It is not an easy department to run. It has a lot of complexities. And lands itself, lands is at the forefront of every Papua New Guinean's lives. Every single Papua New Guinean, whether you be full-blooded Papua New Guinean, half caste, quarter caste, whatever. But if you are Papua New Guinean by birth, you own land through your mother's side or your father's side. So when people say, oh, mikam lo stap lo town lo lay na mosmi na noga ground, that's bullshit. They have land back home. Everyone has land rights in Papua New Guinea. Every single person. And we all hold that dear to our hearts. It guides the fabric and intricacies of our customary practices, societies, and pride and everything. Land is fundamentally our center spine, our heart and soul. And I'm really glad that we sit here today to discuss this very important thing and find a pathway, a middle ground that can be able to guide our future as a country and our people to make them have equal rights to land, make certain they are not trampled on, and make certain those rights are protected by law. And in those land rights also comes human rights, for Papua New Guineans. I would also like to say thank you to all parliamentarians that the recent amendments to the Land Act, which are brought before Parliament last year, has been done, and related legislation. All of these are aimed at modernizing land administration, strengthening governance, and enabling practical utilization of not only customary land, but also alienated land. Customary land is, as I said, a very contentious subject. And sometimes it is because of lack of knowledge or lack of awareness that we sometimes cannot address these issues. Papua New Guinea is now at a point that we have to move beyond talking, move beyond theory, and move towards pilots and scales and drawing lessons from what can practically work for us. We look at the ILG. When the concept of the ILG and the SABLs were brought in, before my time, it was a good motive, it was a good platform. Unfortunately, it was misused, abused, and is a result of many problems that we face today here for customary land owners. In my view, the ILG should be abolished and thrown out or completely revitalized. But we need advice on that. And that is where the Parliamentary Committee and this joint partnership sits to work with it. The ILG is what is causing a lot of problems in our customary landowners today. But it was brought in as a noble idea. The SABLs were brought in as a noble idea to fast-track development. But who abused it? Human beings. Like every good concept that we bring, you always have that one or two human beings in there who like to manipulate systems, either being government, either in the land department, or educated elites. And the educated elites were the problematic issues with the ILGs, because they went back home, they knew the system, they manipulated the system, they got our Trangu landowners in the village who couldn't read and write, told them to sign off on it, made them elected chairmen and board members and everything, got the land registered, took away their rights, then brought it to lands department and got them registered. So now it gave them controlling interest to determine a simple farmer, a simple villager's future. And that was where the abuse is. You look at some of the oil palm pushes on land development in East New Britain. That is because the poor person in the village was misled by educated elites. Educated elites cause those problems. Bringing it in, getting it manipulated, having the ILGs registered, and then went back and made money out of it and abused the rights of ordinary Papua New Guineans. So this process now, Keith, that we sit on with the United Nations, is a good process so that we can look at how we can prevent this from happening again. We've got to prevent it against ourselves, our own people, our own educated people who abuse that system. So it is in my honest view that the ILG system really needs to be looked at, either thrown out the window in its entirety or re-looked at and sorted out properly so that we can have a system that is workable for every single Papua New Guinean and provides and protects the human rights of that Papua New Guinean in every village. We have now managed to achieve the 1995 and 2019 National Land Summits, and we have some success in some of our partnerships that we have had. Whilst we look at alienated rights, we also look at some successes that we have working together with customary landowners. Working together with customary landowners, you have the successes of Tuhava, a pilot project that I am so happy on how it's working. Working together with landowners, working together with businesses, and having lands department facilitating that so that it works in a good way. Looking at Faria, looking at Laloki, Faria partnering with the National Capital District, looking at Nadzat, back in my own hometown in Leh, trying to develop one of the newest cities in Papua New Guinea since independence. We have never built a town or a city since independence. But to do that, we need to work closely with our landowners. We cannot forcefully take it over. And there's been much innuendo in the press on Nadzat. People have pointed fingers at myself. People have said a lot of things. Social media and the press is another animal. Sometimes they need to really investigate the facts. Nadzat is a national government-driven policy that we want to develop a brand new town because Leh is overcrowded. We need to plan and build a proper town for Papua New Guineans. Proper streets, proper services. But where do we get the land? It is by talking to the landowners. But the landowners have a complex issue at Nadzat. Right now, a lot of the landowners are selling it, and that's happening in Moresby, Leh, Kokopo, everywhere. Landowners themselves are selling their own land outright to other people for a measly 5,000 kina and 2,000 kina. It is not the lands department that sells that land. It is the landowners themselves. So how do we help them? How do we educate them? How do we make them aware of it? How do we partner with them to ensure that we manage their rights properly and fruitfully for their children's benefit? When you look at that, Tuhava comes into light. Landowners working in partnership with the lands department, working in partnership with developers that are now building a brand new suburb of nearly 4,000 houses, fixing roofs over heads for people in a congested city like Port Moresby. So taxpayers have the freedom of right to be able to purchase a house that belongs to them. Too many working class Papua New Guineans sit in ramshackle settlements. They should be provided proper housing and land, but to be done in a proper way, working with proper landowners and developers and government. Tuhava stands as a testament to that. I use Tuhava a lot in my examples because it is a working thing, using current existing laws. You look at the landowners who have given the land voluntarily. Lands has helped them to convert that land into alienated land. They have found a developer that is an honest, genuine developer, helping to put money into it, and now they're developing a brand new suburb. When you look at it, government did not put one toya into that. But what does government get out of that? What does the landowner get out of that? What does the developer get out of that? Because when we talk about it, you've got to be able to realize that all three parties need to benefit. one way or the other, and all three parties need to work together. So a land that only had Magani running around on it has now been made valuable, made bankable. That land that was valued at zero before, in customary practice, it is high value. But in modern monetary terms, it had nil value. It had to be made bankable. That's where the customary process, transactions towards alienated land happen. That land, the value now after conversion, about 585 hectares, would be worth a couple of $100 million now. And that piece of paper you can take to the bank and you can mortgage it, you can find a partner for it, you can develop it, and you can utilize it. So they found a partner, which we put together. The partners are now have to find the money. But no man goes and throws in $1 billion kina investment without security of tenure and guarantee that he will get his returns back. So we need to protect the investor also. So the investor, having the security of tenure of the alienated land, is able to now work with the landowners. How does government utilize it? Government should be building roads, sewage, power into assisting them so we can drop the house prices down. But government has failed in providing those very important services like road, power, water to help develop it so we can drop the housing price down. But private development has taken that on board and grown with it. That is why the house prices remain at a constant high, because someone has to pay for those services. But private enterprise works faster. That is why when you look at Tuhava, the design, the landowners now have subcontractor groups, village boys, now as subcontractors, building their houses at Tuhava. There is a factory now established at Tuhava, employing people from the local community to erect those 4,000 houses. So it creates jobs, creates skill sets, and creates participation with landowners. Government, mixing money, blow me back lower. We did not put one toy into it. And that is what government should be doing, not trying to run business. So how do we get our money back? We get our money back through the land rates, an approximate 500 kina average per allotment per year. So if you have 10,000 homes at Tuhava, you'll recover approximately 5 million kina back per annum back into government coffers without lifting or breaking a sweat. That's easy business. The second one is the power. Everyone at Tuhava will be paying 200 kina minimum for a power bill, maybe 300, but I'm averaging 200. PNG Power receives 24 million kina, goes back into PNG Power. That's government. PNG Water receives another 14 million or 12 million, comes back into PNG Water for no outlay. So in total, you have the positives of a landowner group benefiting. Their land is not stolen and squatted on by settlers. They are protected. The clan is protected. Then you have government benefiting approximately 50 million per annum for doing nothing except policy and process. Then you have the developer benefiting from his investment and making money from it with the landowner business arm. You have the skill sets, and bottom line, you put homes over heads for hard-working, tax-paying Papua New Guineans. It is a really good model. Anyway, that was an example. And then you look at another scale, which I don't speak too much about it because it was before my time. And Semoy is sitting here, Edai Town. Another really good model of working with customary landowners, working with developers, and you have Edai Town. More of that should be promoted. More of that should be done. And then you go on that side. I forget the name of the Gerika. Then you go to Gerika. Landowners didn't talk to government. They decided to sell their lands on their own for 5,000, 10,000. And Papua New Guineans who need land have no choice. They have to go buy land there without power, without water, without proper planning, without roads, customary land. And now you go to Gerika, it's a sprawling settlement because it's not planned properly. The landowners didn't come and sit with government like what the people at Tuhava did. They didn't plan the land properly. And who can you blame? You can't really blame them. They wanted an income. Government probably failed by not having them, talking to them, sitting down, making services available to them. And that has compounded into what Gerika is today. Look at Tarama, same thing. Started off as a noble idea, but without proper planning, now Tarama has turned into no proper planning. And the bottom line is customary land cannot be made bankable. So whoever buys land there cannot ever go to the banks and get a dinao or try to sell it. Cannot be. The processes are not there. And that is where this parliamentary committee comes into place, because having talked with Keith, we have to find that middle ground where we can make and work in harmony traditional landowners to make their titles somehow bankable. How do we do that and protect the rights of our traditional landowners while also protecting the rights of investors and freeing up large tracts of land so that Papua New Guinea can develop on the pathway it needs to do? One of the biggest impediments, while it is an advantage to all of us as Papua New Guineans, one of the biggest impediments to development also is the availability of properly tenanted land for development. 90% of plantations that were acquired in post and prior colonial era that were thriving plantations, some up in the highlands, those huge tea plantations, huge coffee plantations, huge coconut and copra plantations. Because of landowner issues, those plantations are no longer thriving. They are no longer thriving, providing an export commodity and bringing in much needed foreign income, not providing employment, not providing taxes, and they have been left to be lying in ruins. So we have to find the middle ground. While we talk about protection and advancing customary rights, we have to find that middle ground that stops people abusing it and also protects Papua New Guinea's development and our children's development into the future. It is critical. It is a time bomb waiting to explode. And I say this with a background of 15 years as a patrol officer, practical experience, sitting down, mediating with landowner groups in places like Chimbu. Sitting down, whilst we talk about 100 or 200 hectares on the coast of disputes on customary land, in the highlands you talk about 400 square meters, 300 square meters of disputes over customary land. And you have to sit down and work out all the issues. Mtanget blusa tanaplap, diwai blusa tanaplap, traditional practice. Usa tungna blem kampait na roni molain go naksim disla ground. And you have to sit there. And that comes, when I speak, I come with 15 years of experience of sitting, talking to local landowners on the customary issues, the problems that they are faced with, not from some fancy office. I've walked that path sitting with them, and I know exactly what it means. When you talk about land partnership, we should look at that. We should always work with landowners to find that middle ground, work with government to ensure that government protects its citizens, and also find that pathway that development for Papua New Guinea can progress and move forward. Because the risk also is there that if in alienated land, if we do not protect alienated land, imagine if every single person decided to claim Parliament House or the Steamships building or APEC building, Papua New Guinea as a society, as a country, would be fragmented. It would break apart. That is reality. When we talk about land disputes did not come in the colonial era. It lived with us, with our grandparents and our great-grandparents. Because in tribal wars, when we fought with other tribes, land, women, pigs, that sort of thing, were trophies of war. In customary practice, the biggest, strongest clan pushed back other clans, and they acquired those large tracts of land that result in a lot of disputes today. Because tumuna bla napla to gam tanget blomia mi planim lahap. But napla to mi pla paitna kukuim yuna ronim yugona na umplaksina plani tanget blom plaloya. Now I'm asplo tok blo cross lo giraun lo disla kamap. I'm true no gat. So time you me talk, big plus something now you me must walk him. And I agree with Keith. We need to find a way. We need to find a way that we are able to register, identify all landowner groups in Papua New Guinea, and have a register for them all. So we do not have numerous land courts that continue over and over and over again. Each traditional landowner needs to be identified. Their land has to be surveyed properly. They have to be registered properly so that government can work in partnership with the authentic landowners, not some educated elite who hides the landowners and comes in with a piece of paper saying he's a landowner. It is a long, tedious, hard process, but it needs to start now to protect the rights of ordinary little people in the village from abuse by our own elites. At independence, we own about 97% of the land was under customary ownership. I think it has grown. So instead of 4%, I think it's grown to about 6%. Every Papua New Guinean, as I said, is a landowner by birthright, by the application of customary land laws. This is globally unique. It is a sense of our lives. As elsewhere, indigenous people have no longer direct retainership of their customary lands. It is a source of pride, wealth, but at the same time can be a source of a lot of problems. I also have a landowning issue that I spent Christmas over in the village trying to resolve in my mother's tribe. And it has been going on since I was 19 years old. So it is a complicated process that we need to fix. This places special responsibility on government to design systems that protect ownership while enabling development and not locking land away from opportunity. Good practice, good records, good registration, good identification, so that we know exactly usat onim disla baret, usat onim disla valley, na usat onim disla hab ground. I urge all customary landowners to survey and register the land so it's easily identified as customary land to prevent abuse, misuse, and lengthy court cases. But easily said than done. Easily said than done. How does a poor landowner in remote Rigo come and register his land? How does a landowner in Minyamia come and walk through the complexities of the lands department, which doesn't make it easier for the landowner too? I understand the problem. We need to find a process that helps the landowner in the district to be able to register his land properly, have it registered electronically, so that no one down the track, 20 years' time, can forge the signature manually and take the land away from them. As I said earlier, with incorporated land groups or ILGs, the intent was noble, but their application is producing unintended outcomes to the detriment of our people. The ILG process is abused, and well-to-do are securing large tracts of customary land illegally. In fact, it is creating more disputes and facilitating land grabbing. And going forward, the ILG Act will need to be reviewed with the intent to be amended or repealed, hopefully this year. We are working on that. Customary land ownership is constitutionally protected. It is a right, as I pointed out. And it is also a source of our personal pride and national pride. But how do we protect that? How do we identify your customary rights and land ownership? There is a mix. We can follow the Fijian model. We can follow the New Zealand model. Or we can design our own model. I would strongly say we design our own model through this group of eminent people working closely with myself and the chairman and the United Nations. Let us design our own model that is workable for Papua New Guinea. The Fijian model is good, but it also puts landowning rights into chieftains, and the ordinary Fijian does not see any wealth from that. Our landowner groups here make more money than the Fijian landowner groups. Our landowner groups here own a lot of more money than those landowner groups. So you have to find a model that is not put in the hands of a select few. It has to be within the smaller tribe, not the huge tribe. It has to be inside the subclan, the family group, so the family group can be able to register and own and protect their own land rights. Because, like the ILG, I would not be happy if I signed off, my grandparents signed off something, and they gave it to someone who I didn't know. I know he's related to me, but I don't know, and then that guy goes to Port Moresby, brings in an oil palm developer, bulldozes me off my land. I don't have gardening rights anymore. I try to complain. I'm suppressed by the police, who is brought in by the developer. So we need to find that win for us. And I'm certain we can find it. I'm certain Keith will be able to help us, working together to find that unique position that we need to protect ordinary rights of ordinary Papua New Guineans. Is customary land in its current form enabling landowners to participate meaningfully in today's economy? We have to ask that question. It is not. People criticize the land amendments we did when we brought it in. But we brought it in so no foreigner can be able to legally purchase your tribal lands. Right now it's happening, whether you like it or not. They're coming and buying it. And everyone blames the lands minister and lands. I don't own your land. I don't own the customary land. It's your own people that sat down, your own educated elites that went and brought these guys and decided to sell that land. Then I get blamed for it. Government gets blamed for it. Customary land, I have no control over it. I only manage the process when it comes through ILG processing But when you want to sell it, when you sell some block of land down there, you don't come and ask the lands minister and say, "Mila sali ground blumia." You don't. You just sell him. We find out later when you bring the process in, or where there's a legal court case or something that is brought in for our attention, for registration. So it needs all of us to work together. We need to be able to work united, identify a land for customary landowners, see how we can harmonize it, monetize it, make it bankable, identify it, have a proper register that cannot be tampered with, so that your children, your grandchildren can be able to utilize that land without any disputes, any court cases, or anything furthermore. Take NADZAP, for example. I come back to NADZAP. When we acquired the land, talking to the landowners, I didn't go talk to the grass or whatever. I know who's the landowners there. But then you have the other landowners that come and talk a lot. I know who the landowners are. I talked to them. But what they didn't realize is that some foreigner had acquired an SABL that they had signed off and given for one coaster bus and 50,000 kina, 800 hectares. So the guy now owns legal right over that. And the landowners miss out. They no longer own that. determined by court of law in our justice system. So what do? I have to help the landowners. Government wants to build a town, so I compulsory acquire it after consulting with the original landowners. That is how I can be able to help them. So I can build a township, but at the same time benefits will go to the original, traditional, tribal landowners, not some guy who hopped off a plane. And people accuse me of compulsory acquiring land. I did it for a reason, to protect the landowners, not abuse their rights. Their rights had already been abused. What have we learned from 50 years of experience since independence? We have learned a lot. Subject to customary land disputes and no security of tenure. For PNG to develop, we need security of tenure, and we need to give confidence to investors, so we protect also the investors that bring money in to make business, and we protect our landowners. And that is government's role to facilitate it. We have to find that middle ground. The government's expectation from this seminar is to generate practical, realistic, and implementable proposals, suggestions, and recommendations. And I am certain that amongst this eminent group, we shall be able to find that. I stand here to also support Keith in this really important work. It is a work that needs to be done for the future of our children. The seminar should also, the outcome should inform policy refinement, and I'm glad Lands Department is sitting here. Support legislative and regulatory improvements, strengthen land governance systems that actually work on the ground, not some theoretical practice like what the Education Department brought in and changed a perfectly working system into churning out, unfortunately, in the 90s, not a very good system. And now we are going back to the original workable system that worked for us. So if you're driving a Toyota Land Cruiser, it doesn't mean driving a Lamborghini in the bush or Wantuat would work for you. The old 10-seater still works well in Wantuat. The Lamborghini will only work well in the streets of maybe Sydney. This seminar should support and improve existing pathways and reform pathways, including the Land Partnership Program. The Land Partnership Program is designed to empower customary landowners, not dispossess them. In my term, I will not dispossess any customary landowners unless they agree for us to work with them. That has always been my policy. We sit down, talk to them, educate them, and then assist them with surveys. If they want to acquire lease the land out, if they want to convert it to state lease, we are here to assist. The issue now we have to strengthen and find in lands is a proper pathway that can be easily accessible to ordinary Papua New Guineans. And lands has had a lot of reforms. Lands has had a lot of reforms. By next month, the Prime Minister should be able to, something close to my heart, making lands, titles, electronic. So it takes away, well, mansa forgim signature, blomin, secretary, the lands people sit on your file for 6 months, or, but whilst being the secretary or minister, sometimes you're not controllable of the clerk that works down there and sits on someone's files. But he'll say, no, God, stop office lo minister. No, God, sinan lo office lo secretary. But he's sitting on it because he wants something from you. And we get blamed for it. So how do we do that? That is it, putting in place an electronic system that cannot be abused. And we've already put that in place, and it should be launched next month by the Prime Minister with a result of an electronic title. That electronic title, the end result is for lands to have electronic titles, electronic processes. So when you lodge something, we know exactly that it sits on your desk for 3 days. It cannot sit on your desk for 6 months. That's wrong. And we know who is tampering with the process. So from lodgement to signature should be a process that is very transparent. Stop him survey on top of survey. Too many times, you will see a survey on top of another survey, and you wonder, how the hell did that survey come? Because someone decided down there to adjust a survey without you knowing about it. Someone decided to adjust an ILG without you knowing about it. Take, for example, an ILG was brought onto my desk a few years back for Gazelle. If I had not done my due diligence and read the ILG, I would have given away and signed off the whole of Karawat town, the university and everything. But it came through 10 processes before it hit my desk. But if I'm not a guy who didn't read, I would have signed it off and would have major legal issues today. To prevent this, we need electronic processing. And that is what government is intending to do and what government has done. Since 2019, part of the payment process, if you own land now, is easily to pay now. Lands used to make 9 million kina. That is a part of the process, the payment process. They used to, in the total lands for Papua New Guinea, I was quite shocked. They only made 9 million kina. Today, as I stand here, 4 years later, lands now makes directly 70 million kina towards consolidated revenue, from 9 million 70, just by tweaking the electronic process. Everyone pays online now. How much did it cost us? Not 50 million. Cost lands and government zero. We just tweaked the systems. And indirect tax, stamp duties and stuff, accumulatively, plus the 70 million, Lands Department now contributes 150 million to government coffers, just by tweaking the system a little bit. Not by employing new staff, tweaking the systems. Not massive outlays of hiring computer geniuses for 50 or 40 million, just tweaking the systems, making it electronic, so that we can be able to collect what is rightfully for the government. And making people who avoid paying taxes and stamp duties accountable. Now they contribute that amount to consolidated revenue. And that needs to be done for all departments in Papua New Guinea, procurement, everything. The Lands Partnership Program aims to ensure a development is a win for all of us, as I pointed out earlier. Customary landowners working together with them. It is important. The state and responsible investors. Land titles in the form of state leases can be given to landowners, if you wish so, to help register, bring it forward. Lands Department will assist. You can gain monetary advantage from that if you say, no, I want to outright sell it. But you have to agree. I cannot force you. Lands Department will not force you. We say, we want your land, 100, you bring in 100 hectares. Say, no, I just want the state lease. We'll give you the state lease. If you want to sell it for development, we'll pay it for development. That is what the Land Partnership Program is all about. Trying to make available alienated land for development and for ordinary Papua New Guineans. It ensures that land mobilization does not result in loss of land to the original landowners or misuse of wealth, but instead build intergenerational prosperity, exactly like Tuhava. They have not lost the land completely. They are still involved in the management, the profits, and partnership in Tuhava. There is a need for modern, transparent, and efficient land administration system to support both customary and state land, and I have already pointed that out on the working mechanisms of that, and looking forward to see one fine day that we have a customary land bank that we can be able to identify ground blue sat, wana me seve bli pinislo dislawara, pinisla aslo kokonase or pinislo solwara lape. That has to be identified. Digitalization and modernization of land administration, the laws that were passed last year, and we've already started working towards that. We've done a lot in lands, and I should compliment the Lands Department on their assistance in that, whilst they get a lot of complaints. And we had a lot of arguments before it started. They saw the need to work with me on modernizing the Lands Department, bringing private sector experience into government departments. Government departments, as I always say, cannot run businesses. Strata title laws are in full implementation aimed at increasing supply of townhouses, apartments, and mixed-use developments in a lot of our cities and towns. We need to work with local landowners around our capital cities, Port Moresby, Lae, Hagen, Groga, Kokopo, because the population has grown from a population of 2.8 million in 1975. We now have a population 10, 11 million people. Where do we house them, all those urban people who come? Where do we house all our graduates? Where do we house all the middle-class people? Where do we put them? We need to work with landowners on the periphery of our cities and towns to help build brand new suburbs, either in partnership with them or government outright purchasing that land to expand suburbs and towns. There's two ways of doing it. Lands Department and myself stand ready to work with landowners on the periphery of our towns. Na mi appeal again, no can Salem ground of 5,000, 10,000 kina. Come look at Mipla. If you want to sell your land, we'll work with you. If you want to register your land and get a state lease and go find a developer, come see us. We'll help you register it and give it back to you for free. You don't need to pay a massive amount. That is the whole purpose of the Land Partnership Program. That is the whole purpose of it. The emphasis is on secure, bankable land titles to access finance, home ownership, and broader economic inclusion. Without bankable titles, without registered titles, you cannot go to the bank and get any financing. Successful land reform requires partnerships grounded in trust, clarity, particularly between customary landowners, government institutions, financial institutions, and responsible, genuine developers. Protecting all interests. Parliamentary oversight and technical support are valuable, and policy and reform direction must ensure the empowerment of customary landowners to take ownership of their own customary land and create intergenerational wealth in partnership with the state, private sector developers, and financial institutions. On that note, security of tenure is a key to unleashing the potential of land and propel Papua New Guinea into a better modern future. It is one of the key aspects of it. Realism and practically workable solutions encourage. Ideology must not stand in the way of solutions that deliver results for landowners and the country. The government will commit to carefully considering recommendations that strengthen existing reforms, particularly those aligned with the Land Partnership Program and landowners. Government will do everything to protect customary landowners. We are not enemies. We all are Papua New Guineans. We all own land. So whatever laws we make will also benefit me when I leave the life of politics. Mi bagobek stalo ples kanagatu. Me too less go na cross lo ground. Me too le work business lo ground lo me. So now me sit down lo position of power. Me must work on them government, work on the landowners, work on the Molnapla line to ensure that me pla pani one pla good pla working road. So that me too time me go sit down lo place, but me benefit lo this la. Plan the time me pla politicians lusting thing. So one pla time but me pla go back style lo place. So one Sunday me pla work me no pla protecting me pla. My view is to do it so that one fine day I will go and sit in the village and land will be protected. My people's land will also be protected, not abused by some intellectual or some government officer also. Government is committed to working across all land tenure systems, customary, freehold, and state leases. The government's ultimate goal is to protect customary landowners, find a working pathway, secure, bankable, and usable land arrangements that support development, tourism, agriculture, industry, job creation, home ownership, and all that. The dialogue created by the seminar is appreciated, and the government looks forward to working closely with the outcomes which will help shape better land governance for the next 50 years. And always remember, what works for someone else doesn't necessarily mean it will work well for us. We have to find our own pathway. Too many times we adopt systems that works well in other countries, but doesn't work well for us. It doesn't work well for us. Singapore, they have their own peculiar system. Australia has its own peculiar system. Malaysia has its own peculiar, New Zealand has it, Fiji has it. But let's find a Papua New Guinean system that will work for all of us, for our own peculiar system. Once again, thank you to the organizers, participants, Chairman Keith, United Nations. And I think I've spoken long enough in the seminar. I think it's formally declared open, if I need to say that. And thank you. Thank you to our knights, Sepuka, Ituplakapsila, and all our esteemed gentlemen I see sitting here. I'm certain that you will have very good commentaries and very good inclusive discussions. Lo walk one time, lo straight in life, lo people. Thank you, Tomas. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Acting Prime Minister and Minister of Lands. Thank you very much for generously sharing your time, your wisdom, and your advice with this group. So to memorialize this moment, we'd like to invite our guest speaker and UNRC and Chairman Keith Duhu to allow us to have a photo opportunity with them. So may I invite our comms team to help us arrange the photo opportunity before we go on a tea break and begin our discussions. So Kellyanne, Seru, please assist.